afraid. They're not afraid of me at all. So unfortunately, so I feel like I've got a pretty good series of backstops against going totally crazy. And so, and I really care about their opinion because these are people I love and respect. And
this whole interview so far kind of seems like he's saying repeatedly, I was very close. In fact, I'm consistently very close to being on a wire's edge, a dangerous wire's edge. But these are the few factors keeping me in check. These are the few things that are keeping me from the tipping point. Let's see how Rubin and Tucker...
The media stuff is so...
Also, the first thing I thought of when I saw this clip, I was just like, holy shit, he looks so sweaty and awkward in this position. Like, this is Tucker Carlson's homemade wood shop that you've seen the photos of, and it's just weird, you know? It's kind of like what someone, like 20 years ago, thought woodworking centers are supposed to look like. An amazing Roosevelt dead news article behind him. Or it could be his closet. I'm not entirely sure. Doesn't seem like he really thought this one out.
Shocking to me because I worked at CNN for years, and I hosted a couple shows there, several shows there, and then
Holy shit, he looks just like Nick. I want to be at the RNC. And he's even got the little bit of sweat and beads going on. Holy shit.
I was the main anchor at MSNBC for 4 years. I got fired. But, I still have a really good friend.
Let's go. Yes, let's
nameless,
go.
Who works there. Just a wonderful person, really good guy. And I have a couple of friends at CNN. So not a ton, too. But anyway, I know that world really, really well. And the biggest surprise for me in one sentence is how illiberal they are. I always imagine they're liberal networks. No. I'm liberal. Okay, in the sense that, like, I believe in the Enlightenment, and I believe in the Bill of Rights, and I think we do have rights. They are not liberals. They are defenders of the powerful, which is a much greater...
I feel like he's interrogating himself. Like he's got like a hot light or something pointed right at himself. Or maybe that's just to simulate actually having to have a conversation with Dave Rubin. That's just what it feels like.
Sin. Like, you can have silly politics. I get it. I've had silly politics. Maybe I do now. People make mistakes. But defending the billionaire class, blaming everything on like working class white people who are like, by far the most shafted people in America. Look at the suicide rate. Look at the death rate. I mean, it's measurable, but everything's their fault.
Populism. We got populism.
I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is the host of Tucker Carlson Tonight on Fox News and the author of the new book, The Long Slide, 30 Years in American Journalism. Tucker Carlson, welcome back to the Rubin Report.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Journalism.
Tucker, you are not in your studio. You're not in a suit. You appear to be in some sort of secret bunker area with books and
I do have
pictures.
Questions.
What's going on over there?
I would like to know.
I'm in my barn, actually, to be totally honest, which is where I work. I live in a rural area in northern New England, and we have an old barn that we use for everything, basically, to store the boats. And my wife has her Peloton, and we have our studio in it, and, bunk beds for people. And so, yeah, I live in my barn.
So you're kind of living the dream that you always wanted in a way. I mean, a couple of years ago, I've quoted this many times, quoted you actually many times. You walked into my house, opened the door to my garage, and I don't know if Fox News is going to want me to say the exact thing you said, but you basically said, holy effing shit, you've done it. Meaning that...
Wait, you can say shit, but you can't say fuck? Seems like odd. Holy effing S is what you should have said. It does sound ridiculous when I say it out loud, but yeah, you get it.
I had a studio at home and I was able to run my operation.
Yeah, it's past the limit.
You've kind of expanded into that world while still maintaining the mainstream cred.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I've always believed that what matters is how you live. What's your life like? What do you do when you wake up? What time do you wake up? Who do you wake up with? I mean, those are the things that define your life. And so when I saw how you lived, I thought, man, this guy is really I mean, I know people who make a ton of money who don't live anywhere near as well as you do. And I was just so impressed by that. And a confluence of events happened. And we actually live in the town that we've been in our whole lives. So it's not, we didn't move anywhere weird. This is where, we had a house here always.
Dave Rubin is living a very comfortable life. It's just as you all thought. Because, he always talks about how he's like, well, I'm not funded by the Koch brothers. That's absurd. All right. All my money comes from donos and donations. No, he's living a comfortable life, even by Tucker Carlson standards. So that's a fine life indeed. I like how he says that in the same, intro where we saw him be like, well, I just want to talk about the working class and the poorest ones and how they're, objectively being manipulated by the very wealthy.
Always growing up, but why not just move there? And so we did, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, and you were dealing with some headaches living in some other places.
That's true,
because,
Shrinking Circle. I bought his book. I have it right over there.
All the usual trolls and everything. They were sending people to your house and,
Right.
literally like going after your wife and kids and all that. I know it's not fun to talk about that, but can you just talk about it a little bit, just sort of relative to, you're just trying to do what you think is right as a journalist and as a personality, and then how it affects the life and the people around you?
Yeah, I mean, it was just sad to see it happen. I moved to Washington as a kid. My dad worked for the federal government and on the Cold War and doing pretty honorable things. I would say. I think that anyway.
Wait, what is going on?
So I've lived in Washington essentially my whole adult life. I mean, since high school. And it's a bipartisan town. I mean, by definition, both parties are represented. Both parties live there. And as a result, there's been this permanent truce effectively for decades where you can live next to people you disagree with, but you don't talk about it at dinner parties. You can be friends anyway. And I love that environment. A lot of my friends had politics different from mine. And then in 2016, Trump was such a threat. They were so worried. Not that Trump would actually do anything, and he really didn't, as we know. But he said stuff, and he said obvious stuff. And they were so terrified that Trump was going to point out some really obvious things about the way things actually work that they were completely threatened by him. I mean, really threatened by him. It was like a foreign power occupying the city, and the hatred, the bitterness. And I just kind of agreed with a lot of Trump's, I don't know, ideas maybe a little strong, but themes, like, when you run the government, you should always ask yourself, is this helping the people who live here, who voted for me, who pay for all of this, whose country it is? I really agree with that. I always have. So that the division in the city between the overwhelming majority of people who saw Trump as this satanic figure and the tiny minority of us who were like, well, yeah, okay, Trump, whatever. It's obvious, he's got all these personal faults, got it. But he's making really good points. Like, what is the point of NATO? Just pick one of 1,000 examples. Why shouldn't we have a border wall? What about all those people who died of fentanyl? Like, what's the answer? And all of a sudden, it just became impossible to live there. And then, I've never lived by a gate or anything. We lived right on the street in the city. I raised my 4 kids there, and all of our dogs and all the stuff. And I felt like we were really part of the city. And then next thing you know, people are showing up at the house, and you can sort of see where this is going. It's so threatening. Where does it end? You're going to wind up shooting somebody. And I don't want to do that. I hate, but that's where it's going, because just living there was so provocative to them. Having them show up and threaten violence against my family was so threatening to me that it wasn't going to end well. And I just thought, and our 4th child went off to boarding school and we didn't have any kids at home. And so we're like, well, wait, why don't we just move to where we already spent the summer? So we did.
Yeah. So
that's such a weird story. That's such a bizarre story that I just saw the way things were going and I was going to grab a gun and I was going to shoot somebody. So I had to move. And then along comes Trump and he's telling me all these things. And a lot of the things are things that I wish I'd heard. And they happen to be just like, well, yeah, we're talking about a lot of popular ideas. If you're going to say that there are these evil corporations, you're going to get a lot of people on board with you and that all these rich people are fucking you over. Yeah, that's going to be a pretty popular idea. And what's the idea of NATO and all of this kind of stuff? Yeah.
Do you think that the people that you're talking about there that are sort of the permanent DC class and the swamp, as Trump would call them, do you think it's a conscious decision that they're always existing to keep themselves in that power? Or is it just that you just get there and then before you know it, you're just in this thing and you like what's happening, so you just stay in that thing? So that's why he was the threat to it. And I would argue that in a weird way, now that Trump has stepped away, a lot of the hatred that was just always directed towards Trump is now directed more towards you because you're carrying the torch for some of those ideas.
Yeah, I'm not totally aware of that. I have a kind of peripheral sense that I'm disliked by some people, but I don't have a television. I don't go on the internet. I don't use social media. I'm pretty insulated from that stuff because why would I?
You literally don't. I know you don't check Twitter, but you literally don't have a television?
Oh no, I've never had a TV. No.
Wow.
No, I just didn't. I didn't grow up like that. And my dad worked in TV when I was a kid, and
You don't use computers. You don't use social media. You don't have a television.
God, those communists are amazing.
Booty Spoon, thanks for subscribing to Tier 1. I appreciate you. It kind of makes a lot of sense now, if that is true. If he just he sits at home, probably reads the old-timey papers, gets them delivered every morning by the milkman, and then he just gets a little bit angry about the state of the world, probably pops on the AM radio, heads down to work, and then knows exactly what he's going to say every day.
He was pretty pro reading, I would say. He was a militant reading person. So yeah, we had a lot of enforced reading in our house. And so that's how I grew up. But but mostly, I have a very close circle of friends and I have a big family and I'm really close to my wife and my producers who I absolutely love. My executive producer, I'm really close to him. So I have a lot of people around me who will tell me the truth and do. If they think I'm being a douche or I'm crossing some line or whatever, they'll just say it. They're not afraid. They're not afraid of me at all. So unfortunately, so I feel like I've got a pretty good series of backstops against going totally crazy. And so, and I really care about their opinion because these are people I love and respect. And
this whole interview so far kind of seems like he's saying repeatedly, I was very close. In fact, I'm consistently very close to being on a wire's edge, a dangerous wire's edge. But these are the few factors keeping me in check. These are the few things that are keeping me from the tipping point.
So my view has always been my whole life. You know, I had a weird childhood, which kind of changed my view on this. But fundamentally, it was you should only care about the opinions of people who care about you and who have, you know, demonstrated loyalty and wisdom and an ongoing relationship. Why would you ever let
Wait, wasn't he like a rich trust fund baby style person who like already was incredibly wealthy by the time he started trying to start his media career? And he got a lot of his early like times calling into Bubba the Love Sponge's show where he would just go off about how wealthy and waspy he was.
Strangers have control of your emotional state. Like, that's insane. And, you know, you hear people say that, but I think I'm in the rare category of people who mean it. So I would never go online and like Google myself. Why would I do that?
No, I know,
like,
I know you mean it. Right, exactly. I know you mean it because I think the first time we met in person, I asked you something about the hate and the Twitter mentions, and you're like, I don't have Twitter. Like, it's you know, it's Tucker Carlson on Twitter.
I mean, I just got to be honest. That's probably amazing for the mental health, considering how hated Tucker Carlson is on Twitter. It's got to be what, like every other week when he'll be like a top trending name because he said something so horrifyingly like, "Well, that's just a white supremacist talking point," but now it's on mainstream TV. Great, now everyone knows about the white genocide conspiracy theory.
We're like, it's not, you know, I'm not the one checking it and tweeting this stuff, and that keeps you kind of insulated and safe and sane.
It's and I have a huge number of people I talk to every day. I mean, I spend my whole life talking to people, mostly by text, but hundreds of people. And I try to clear my text every night. It was up till 2 a.m. in front of the fire where I live. It's cold on September 1st, and with my dogs, you know, and I'm up really late, banging out these texts, taking notes. So I speak to a ton of people, and not just people in my world, not just famous rich people, but like a lot of random people. A waitress that I had in Big Sur, and I hope she's watching this. I know she's a fan of yours. Years ago,
dramatic zoom.
I gave her my text for some reason, and she and her husband are like such thoughtful people, and she's been texting me ever since. And I swear, once
I'm really, really curious. This is such a useless fact of information, but I wonder if Dave Rubin provides, like the Rubin Report provides you with a camera, and he has control and gets to zoom in and out, or if Tucker Carlson just has a webcam and doesn't know his settings, it's on like auto zoom, or weirder third option, Tucker Carlson is in control of the camera and he wants to give it that like dramatic in and out every now and then, you know?
once a month. 2 nights ago, I used one of her lines on the air. Like, at least once a month, I'll like run with a story idea.
Yeah, also, that totally kind of skips over the point. Does your wife know that you're texting random waitresses? Oh, don't worry, they're all working class. That's the point. I want to like text as many working class waitresses as possible, and that way we can really figure out like what is the heart of America. You know, what's inside her.
Number of people that I correspond with, but I don't want to open it up to the mob. I mean, because then I can't think clearly, and my whole job is. You know, and I don't always pull it off, but I really try to think clearly, like what is going on.
But not on
here?
social media, of course.
Get higher, look down. What are the outlines of this? And being involved in this, fuck you too. You know, whoa. I don't like no.
Whoa, Joker. But yeah, it makes perfect sense, right? He's got plausible deniability all over. He's like, well, honey, come on. I can't talk to her on social media. I can't talk to anyone on social media, you know, because of the hate. So I have to text them personally. But I just want to find out what makes like the average working day American tick. That's it. That's all I want to know.
Noise in my personal life. I like quiet, and I don't like noise in my work or intellectual life. You know, I like to think. I like nature. You know, I like hunting and fishing. I like to be outside. I don't want to sit in a room and read other people's hysteria. I don't think there's any upside to that at all.
Trust me, man, as a guy that just spent 30 days in a rainforest, basically, I completely feel that. And I've realized that my relationship...
Again, sorry, if you're not familiar with Dave Rubin lore, once a year, he takes all of August off, like most, you know, wealthy people do, to go on vacation. But he always likes to sell it as he's actually doing this kind of like very Buddhist Zen-like activity where he shuts off all social media and goes into nature to find himself or whatever. He's just taking vacations in other countries. That's it, you know, 100%. And he's like, yeah, well, I've unplugged. As in, I don't want to have to work for a month and just do whatever I want and have fun. Yeah.
With social media, it has to be a little bit different. And one of the last things that I remember,
yeah, he went camping in the rainforest.
Was that he sort of got
it changes all the time.
You were going fishing, basically, by some guy. And what was so interesting about it, and I say this about everything these days, it's not the incident itself. It's not the incident. It's the way the media reacts to the incident. So this guy's kind of getting in your face, and the way the whole media was like, yeah, well, Tucker's mean, so everyone should get in his face and be more mean. And it's like, man, that will lead us all to a very dark place.
Well, someone's going to get shot. I mean, I'm serious. I mean,
what, by
where do
you?
you think that ends? You
keep bringing it up.
Physically confront people because you don't like their opinions about politics. in front of their children. I mean, one of my kids was there. I was in a fly shop that I've gone to for, many, many years.
I was joking. Is it actually relating back to you?
That I really love. And it felt, I mean, this is so whiny, and I try never to whine in public or private, but it really felt like a violation. And I thought, well, I'm never going here again, which was sad. But then, there are other places to go, I guess. I live in a really beautiful place with just, untold miles of empty rivers and streams and lakes. And why am I in Montana anyway?
That's weird that he would say, I try never to whine, because that's basically his entire TV show. It's just him whining about all the things he thinks is ruining society.
In Maine, but anyway, it just made me sad. But I also think it's very unwise to do that. I lived in DC for 35 years. I would see people all the time I disagreed with. I've had dinner with Nancy Pelosi. I stood next to Barney Frank. I remember it at an event. I could, that was my whole life. Yeah. And the idea of screaming at someone because
that's worse for Nancy Pelosi than it is for you.
This is what happens when you have a secular society at scale, which has never happened in human history. There's always a religion because people have a need for meaning. You take that away and people just replace it with political ideology.
Lack of religion.
And that's what it's really about. Like the guy screaming at me,
classic lefty stuff,
an apostate. I was
classic
liberal
stuff.
Faith or something. That's not how I see it, but it's how a lot of people do see it. And I think that we should be aware that the end point of this is violence. That's where it's going. You know what I mean? And I hate that.
Okay.
I hate violence. I've seen it.
It cannot be Tucker. It's let's just say the evidence is pointing towards his hands are like this, right? And I don't think it's what someone who had control and saw him at the same time would be doing. I don't think that's what Tucker Carlson. I think we have a third party at play. Okay.
A lot, actually. I'm totally opposed to it. But the way that the things have been set up, the way we communicate, the end point is violence. And I say that all the time on the air because I think people should know that.
Yeah, no, it's almost most definitely
which is so interesting because then the way they'll frame it is that
a robot is behind the camera,
and it's actually the reverse. It's a warning. But to your point on the secularism part, do you see where we're at right now as just sort of the end of a purely sort of secular America? That at the end of just a secular America, 2 + 2 now equals 5. Boys are girls. We don't know which way is up. Our history is no longer our history. That sort of without some sort of undergirding of religion or some subset of belief, that this is what you get. And I really fear this because, as you know, as someone that considered myself liberal my whole life, I wanted that thing to work. But I have come to the uncomfortable truth that it cannot work. It simply cannot work when it's purely secular.
You're always going to have a religion. And, you can say, well, the crucifixion is kind of a ridiculous story. The Talmud is sort of absurd. Okay. But compared to what? You know what I mean?
Right. What do you got that's better? Yeah.
Compared to the idea that men can get pregnant or 2 + 2 = 5, it's, you're trading.
Wow. They keep associating those two things together. If you say them together enough times, everyone's going to be like, yeah, because that doesn't make any sense. I know math doesn't work that way. 2 + 2 is 4. And so the other thing must not be true either, as long as you keep saying them together over repetition. According to the American Values Atlas, 23% are unaffiliated, and 2% don't know, which would put the vast majority of America still very, very religious. Very religious. And the largest chunk being white evangelical Protestants, white mainline non-evangelical Protestants, and white Catholics, making up the vast majority of America. Y'all are not an evaporating class. You're not an oppressed class. You're the majority. Then comes Black Protestant, Hispanic Protestant, other Protestants of color. It's still mostly Christians. It's still a mostly Christian nation. Overwhelmingly mostly Christian. America is a Christian nation, everybody. Sorry to announce.
Trading one superstition for another, and
bombshells.
That's just the state of man. We're always going to have a belief in the transcendent because we're wired that way. So you need to think carefully about what God you worship, what religion you sign up for here. And I think we should be honest about it. I mean, the political discourse that I just described and that you live in the middle of every single day is not about convincing people. It's not rational people bringing, a set of facts to the conversation to try to persuade the other side to join them. Of course not. It's a religious war. That's exactly what it is. So we should name it. This is a cult. The mask stuff. I won't be boring about it, but in one sentence, we spent a year. First of all, I was really worried about COVID at the beginning. I think we were the first show on cable TV to note that COVID existed because we're, interested in the rest of the world. Saw this in central China. What is this? I believe that.
Yes, you were the first one.
3, 4, 5%.
You discovered COVID-19.
Really, many millions would die. So it's not a question of not taking COVID seriously. If you take COVID seriously, you want solutions that are effective. I mean,
vaccines.
That's how you give
the stuff that you've been pushing up against.
It deserves is by responding to.
Is it ivermectin time? Are we about to horse pace?
About vaccines too, but the mask stuff is so totally unmoored from any kind of research data at all. In fact, there's a lot of countervailing data that shows that it's counterproductive. Bad.
No.
We keep saying this for a year. We're like, well, no, there's this new study out of Vietnam, the biggest on masks ever done. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, shut up, mask denier. And I finally realized, because I'm not super smart, that like they don't care what the evidence. There's no interest whatsoever. Masks are good. This is what we know. This is the catechism. And I'm like, okay, this isn't public health. This is theology.
Come on,
so I don't really know what to
paste.
do with theology. That's why we don't talk about it. Like when
I want some horse
when I was
paste.
a kid, it was like, no, you don't talk about religion in a public setting because it's too personal, right? Sex, religion, politics, off limits. So I just don't really have the tools to argue with people over religion because my default setting is, hey, everyone has their beliefs. Like, I'm very liberal that way.
So basically, he's comparing people who believe in, things like vaccines, science, common sense, their a cult or religion themselves. That's kind of what I'm getting.
The problem is theirs is an evangelical religion. It's 7th century Islam. It's converted.
But the majority of Americans are actually religiously evangelical, like the largest groups. Yeah, statistically. I mean, that's just based on facts. So.
Or die. It's really, really aggressive. Whoa.
So what do we do with that? I mean, I've spent a lot of time when I was off the grid thinking about just that.
Will, what do we do with the thing you just made up? What do we do with that? You just made something up, and now we have to talk about it like it's a real thing.
Because I'm with you that we sort of are in a cold civil war in that, and I don't want a civil war, obviously, and I don't want violence, just as you laid out, and I want this thing to work. But it seems to me you have a set of people that I would include people like us in, which is basically live and let live, and we can talk about where the government should be.
Right.
But then we have this other set that want everything, and they want everything from us and to tell us how to do everything. Though that's not a liberal arguing with a conservative. That's something much more dangerous because they are not going to stop. So what do we do with that? Those of us that want to live freely.
I don't know. I've been like you. I haven't been in a treehouse for a month. I wish, but I have been brooding about it, and my instinct is, I think, is the same as everyone else's. Let's use the federal system to create zones of choice where people can decide how they want to live. By moving there. Certain states will have these rules, others will have another set of rules commensurate with the desires of the people they represent. Like that's.
But will that be enough? Will that be enough? As they're always trying to give the federal government more power in the presidency when it's their guy more power.
So that's kind of the problem. Yeah. It's like that's not their temperament at all. So I live in a super rural area where it's basically 1985, and people just they don't spend a single second worrying about the sex lives of hipsters in Brooklyn. Like it's not even a thing. It's like if they're interested in Brooklyn, they'll go and check it out, but they're not.
Their sex lives aren't that great, from what I understand.
Well, I know they're all involuntarily celibate. That's the other thing. It's like my obsession. No one's having sex. Everyone's talking about sex. No one's doing it, which is like so distressing to me. But anyway, whole separate topic. But here's my point. In Brooklyn, there are people laying awake at night.
That is what George Orwell 1985 is about. A whole bunch of sexless people. In the book, that does not exist, by the way.
Really agitated on a sincere level, too. It's not just performative. Worried that there are people in my zip code who are like maintaining these attitudes that are unacceptable and must be stamped out. So it's like it's asymmetrical. Like one side is evangelical, wants to convert the other side or kill them, and the other side is like kind of traditionally liberal, like, hey, you do your thing, I'll do mine. That's why I live here. We don't have a police department in my town, obviously. And
what's funny is like it's unironically going to be the group that is refusing to wear masks, refusing to get vaccinated, refusing to do anything to prevent COVID-19 that are going to be killing people. Even if it's inadvertently, you're the ones who are going to be spreading the disease.
That's because no one can afford it. Of course, also no dentist because no one can afford it. But it's also because unless you're doing something really outrageous, like there's no need for the police. Like I will say this. I live in a state that votes kind of mixed. It's probably mostly Democrat, actually. But because it's sparsely populated,
saying ACAB?
Huge.
What?
There really is this tolerance that I've never seen anywhere else. Like they put up in a small town, and anyone who lives in a small town can, I think, confirm this because it's true everywhere. They put up with levels of eccentricity of like truly weird behavior in a way that like liberals used to dream about. I mean, there are people in my town who are doing like totally weird things, and people still see them as.
What are you talking about? What does that have to do with liberalism? In a small town, we just got a whole bunch of people who the cops don't care about, and they do some weird shit, man. Oh, they get weird. Classic liberalism. That's basically what liberalism is about, right? That's what I think the French Revolution succeeded at. Is it allowed us all to be as weird as possible? That's what they wrote. Yeah, that was the declaration.
People, they're not reduced to their weirdest perversion or something. It's like no, he's a good father. But he also exposes himself when the train goes by. Like, you know what I mean? And actually, there literally was a person like that in my town, for real. And everyone loved him.
Probably do something about it.
What is going on right now? This is just so strange. This is really right. Like, half of it, I was like, this feels like an alien doing a parody of Tucker Carlson on this show. But then I'm like, no, this is Tucker Carlson doing a parody of Tucker Carlson on this show. It's utterly bizarre.
at a guy like that, but I get the broader point.
Yeah, no, that's a crime. You're exposing yourself in public. That is definitely that's not just like a weird eccentricity. He's just weird. He's not giving in to his baseline perversions. I can tell you that much. But he does like to whip his cock out and hang brain.
No, but
you know, weird stuff.
But people here were so that you see the whole person, and I feel like in internet world, it's like, oh, you said something mean about gays 15 years ago, or you were insensitive to black people by current standards. Then, like, it's done. It's over. Like, no more job for you. And I'm not defending being mean to any group. Of course not. I'm just saying that people are super complicated, and they have good days and bad days, and virtuous qualities and very ugly qualities, and they're all mixed together in people. Like, that's who we are. But that's not acknowledged online because people's statements are totally disaggregated from the person. And that's not true in a small town. You have to deal with people. Like, we only have one store. It's a gas station.
You started this by saying you do not use any social media online, and yet you're going to be now the arbiter of what is going on social media online, and also compare it to what life is like RL in your small town full of weirdos who expose themselves. But that's totally normal and good and liberal, by the way.
Everyone uses it every day. So you see people every day. So there are people in there probably vote for candidates I hate or doing weird shit, when the lights are off. But I still know who they are. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's three dimensions there. That's actually a perfect segue. And of course, I do want to.
It's such a weird conversation. It's extra great that he's like all sweaty in his actual barn. He's talking about weirdos exposing themselves.
But that's actually a perfect segue to some of the tech stuff, because I think the first time I was on your show, which is a couple of years ago now, and we did it this way, not in person, but online. I was taking the more libertarian approach on the big tech stuff. I was basically like, and this is probably 3 years ago, and things have now been exposed, which is why I've changed my opinion a bit. But I was basically like, they're private companies, let them do their thing, we'll build better things and all that. Now, I'm building stuff, but at this point, it seems to me.
I would like to point out that I'm still not allowed on Substack, unless that's changed. Let's see. Oh, sorry, locals.com. That's Dave Rubin's. So debate Sam Cedar, you coward, .locals.com. I'm still 1985. Rubin, stop 1985ing me. Let me on. Let me in. Let me in. What's going on here? God damn. What a hypocrite.
Me. And your argument, I think, was a little more like, oh, well, there are antitrust things. There's some.
Locals.com is Dave Rubin's social media experience, but he won't let me in.
Thing government's got to do. I don't know exactly what, but something. I've really come around to that, because to me at this point,
I don't know
we
why.
don't do anything.
It could be my name. I'm not sure.
Like, if the government doesn't exist,
it's 1985.
to do something about how they're manipulating us, then what is the purpose at any level?
Yes.
Do you feel like you've been pretty right on it the entire time? And where are you now at this point? Because
no, it's not about using a different name. It's about not being censored. 1985. Craig Orwell.
Well, I haven't been right about anything the whole time. I mean, my views are constantly in flux. My views are utterly different. And, I have the misfortune of having been on camera for 25 years. So, like, it's pretty easy to prove that my views today are not what they were. They're not even close. And I'm not ashamed of that in the slightest. I think people who pay attention change their minds when the evidence changes. Our conclusions always ought to be evidence-based. And so, I mean, I was a libertarian. I was a fellow at the Cato Institute, unpaid.
I'm a white nationalist.
It's hard to even believe that, but it's a different country. And anyway. So
now I'm a white supremacist.
Currently is that democracy.
I just think that at the end of the day in this country, right, it seems like the demographics are changing, and we got people coming in here who don't have Judeo-Christian values because they don't come from Judeo-Christian countries. And because of that, when the demographics change, the population changes, the government changes, and all of a sudden you see that there's a certain subset of people replacing us, and they look a little bit different. And I can't really say more than that, or the producers of Fox are going to take me off the air. But just remember, this is what I've discovered, because I've changed my opinions. I'm into some weird things now.
Is incompatible with this level of concentrated power in the hands of a few people. So the promise of democracy is that everybody has power by virtue of their citizenship. We all have a hand in choosing our rulers. And that's what keeps a society calm, because you don't have to storm the Bastille or hurt anybody, because in 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, you have a meaningful chance, if you get your neighbors involved, to make a change. If people start to understand or believe that they don't have that power, they go crazy. They become really, really radical. That abets radicalism. And the tech power is so overwhelming. I mean, all information in English flows through one portal, Google. Google literally, and I'm not saying this is a partisan at all, just like if somebody cares about democracy, prevented the Trump campaign from raising money with its Gmail lists in the last weeks of the campaign.
And yet 2 seconds before this, it's not the fact that like corporations just have this kind of unadulterated power under capitalism. They never get to that conclusion. They're always like 20 steps behind. And then you'll have Dave Rubin be like, and I just want to say that I've got nothing against private corporations. As you know, I've actually started my own social media, locals.com.
Pain. I don't think that was ever reported. The Trump campaign was so stupid they never said anything about it. But someone told me, and I verified that's true. So like, you don't have to believe, nutcake Sidney Powell to think, that the voting machines were rigged or whatever. That right there is rigging. That's not a free and fair election. If one side can't raise money, what? Like, that's never happened before. And I'm not even getting into the rejiggering of search results, which are clearly designed to produce propaganda rather than what they promise, which is to produce the most popular results. No,
Tucker, they've got a word. They made up a word for it. It's unbiasing. That's what they do. They unbias when they rejigger.
The whole thing. It's like, it's so beyond. And first of all, it's driving people crazy. It's making people into, like, for real conspiracy nuts, because there actually are conspiracies that we can prove for the first time in my lifetime, 52 years. A. B, it's making people radical because it has destroyed their belief.
You are making people radical by spreading this disinformation and just genuine strange.
Some of the stuff in these pages you got right, some of the stuff you got wrong, some of it could have been written today. They're just all terrible now. Was there a moment that it shifted? Was it as pure as maybe we all thought it was at one point, or any of that?
Well, the funny thing is I grew up thinking it was kind of shallow. My father was a magazine.
Oh God, then we're really in trouble now.
I know. So my father was a magazine writer, actually.
Even the one, it had nothing to do with whether I agreed or disagreed. It was just like this short burst thought war is just making us all crazy. So
I know. And the other thing is it's all transmit. That's the problem.
This is so bizarre because like it's two people who contribute so much to all the overarching problems they're actually like not pointing the finger at when it comes to society, and at the same time being like, well, it's a revelation that we figured this all out. Of course,
but they figured correctly that if they cancel a book about how they've canceled other people's books, probably a PR nightmare, so they had to go through with it. They hate me more than they've ever hated anybody, but obviously I don't care. But I just felt a moral obligation just because they were sending me money to do this book, and I didn't want to be part of it at all. And I really did my best to get out of doing this book. They threatened to sue me. They really got up in my face about it. Oh, we all believe in the military. Not anymore. They're lecturing us about white rage. Oh, shit, I'm white. I guess I'm excluded from this. I mean, like, well, who thought of this? This is the single craziest thing our ruling class has done has been thematic. And the theme is destroy the connection between Americans.
It's so interesting you're saying that, because since I just caught up on the Afghanistan thing, as I'm trying to piece it all together in a short amount of time, it feels to me almost like it's intentionally horrible. Like if
the cardiac arrest. Wow,
intentionally trying to not only destroy Afghanistan, but destroy our credibility, make us look like fools, make it look like no one's in charge.
Look at you just frothing for a little bit more war. Come on, can't we just have a little bit more occupation? Just a little bit. Why are we ending wars? I want more war. Do you want movies and Serfs watching the movies? So then come over to the new channels. It's the Serfs cinema. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Can you do the thing, that thumbs up and comment and all those things that help us out in the algorithm that controls every aspect of our lives? Also, if you happen to have a Facebook account, can you delete it? Like just delete it. You should probably delete your Facebook account because it's not a great company. But hey, if you can't do that for whatever reason, I understand. And could you also go to facebook.com/thesurftimes then and give us a little like and a follow. We're just trying to push back against the fact that people like Ben Shapiro happen to dominate the platform entirely. And when everyone asks why do older generations believe the things they believe, one of the problems is the majority of them on social media use Facebook. So to counter that, we're just going to be on there too now. Also, if you happen to have a union or a worker co-op or even a leftist project, podcast, website, Zoom, MySpace, it doesn't matter. We will advertise it for free on this channel. All you got to do is go to weareserfs.com and use the forms that we got there, weareserfs.com. Thanks, everybody.
To our gods, Tigro and Peyton El Jus, we pray to you, our sky daddies, to keep us safe from harm. To our monarchs, Tom Spiker and the Tim Caucus, we shall humbly clean your golden toilets in your spatial palaces. To our lords, Ultra Wolf, Evan Nudie, Trevor R., Alexander Thaler, Ryan Lubin, and Jeff Lamb, we are eternally grateful for this small segment of land for us to toil and work. To our knights, Ariane McCarthy, Daniel Sutton, Ants Are Still Running the World, Coulter Smith, Val 9000, Jenna Tall, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Ultimondi, Trevor Janis, Lemmy 101, Anthropophojack, Sharon 42, Chronic to Hemphog, Catherine, Bone Jenny, Radical Maniac, Ramona Costa, Jimmy Bignuts, Violent Orchard, Sophie Baby, Political Puppy, Andreas Chiringuito, Zach Christensen, Jopi, Josh Mickelson, Todd Buckingham, and Todd Lajeunesse. We raise our glasses, we raise our swords, and we salute you, our friends. And to Lance, you are the wind beneath my wings.